And welcome to Gallery 138. This is a contemporary art gallery that exhibits emerging mid-career artists while bringing intriguing and socially relevant exhibitions to the public. And I'm pleased to be supporting GYC, as the GYC work is integrally connected to the work that Jesse and I have previously done together and will no doubt continue to strengthen our work using the arts to be of service to the world. Art is a mechanism that makes you attentive. If it doesn't make you attentive by whatever mystery, then you're doing something else. Thank you so much.
So my name is Elizabeth Lee, and I am the president of the board, current president of the board of Global Youth Connect. You may know that GYC's tagline is empowering youth to advance human rights and create a more just world. GYC started in 1997 when 15 young people from 10 countries, including former Yugoslavia, Guatemala, Cambodia, Nigeria, and the United States, met. And these people were active in the field of human rights and genocide prevention. And they met specifically because they wanted to prevent the crimes against humanity that were ravaging the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and other conflict zones at that time. And the key they realized was the power of youth.
Thanks so much for coming. And if you're interested, you desperately need teachers.
The power of youth. Organizing youth responsibility, engagement, and action would transform the world around them, and it would lead to the prevention of massive violations of human rights and protection of basic freedoms.
We call it a learning and action community in Rwanda. GYC plus a local partner organization working for 3 weeks. And we involve a lot of different people in this. It's not just youth from the United States and youth from Rwanda, but it's also Rwandan grassroots organizations. Right, we have 5 organizations for each workshop. And we try to invite a variety of organizations. So we might have groups that are dealing with issues related to health. You see the Potters down here dealing with issues related to a historically marginalized group, which is represented by the organization Koporwa. During that workshop, we explore the definitions of human rights. We try to explore consensus. We don't force anybody to come to consensus on this issue. And we talk about the international standards of human rights, because they're international standards that have been signed by both Rwanda, the United States, many other countries. We're all in this together. These are the standards. But we also talk about the grassroots reality, which is that the grassroots organizations are still fighting for rights.
During my delegation experience, we had the opportunity to visit one of the Potters villages. To reach this particular Potters village, we drove about 2 miles into a primarily rural area and parked the van before hiking approximately a half mile into the woods. The community was settled in a remote, inaccessible village on the side of a hill, on land that is as infertile as it is sloping and rocky. In their current location, the Potters had very little access to water, limited access to nutritional food alternatives, and virtually no access to emergency health care within a 1.5 mile radius. In fact, the day we arrived, a mother lost her child in birth, partially because she was forced to deliver the baby in a banana grove as opposed to performing the impossible task of hiking almost 2 miles to a local clinic. They are a historically marginalized group within Rwanda. Some reports claim that they are perhaps one of the oldest inhabitants of the African Great Lakes region. In Rwanda, it's estimated that the Batwa make up less than 1% of the total population, and though they are originally hunters and gatherers, many individuals took to pottery, and when they could no longer forage, when they were pushed out of the forest regions. So before I went to Rwanda, a lot of the information I had was in the framework of the Hutu and the Tutsi because of the genocide and because they're the dominant groups within Rwanda. But when I got to Rwanda, it was not so soon after rather, that I found out there was this third marginalized group that was not always talked about in the framework of Rwanda, and that was the Batwa, or the community of potters that we're talking about right now.
One of the most amazing things that came out of it for me was talking to them about how they said there's so much confusion about our name. You know, they don't really like being called the Potters because that doesn't really define who they are as a people. It's one element, but at the same time, a lot of them disagree. No, I don't want to be called Batwa, and I don't want to be called Indigenous. And I said, do you want to be called Rwandans? And they said, yes, we do want to be called Rwandans. If we can just get all the services, we will be called Rwandans. We will call ourselves Rwandan. And we interviewed this young woman here about the fact that she can't get a new health card because she doesn't have money to buy the photo to put in the card. So this is something that Kapoor was working on. It's something that we documented.
Our history has a record, and it has an indelible scar, not only in Rwanda but also in the world. What happened in 1994, the human rights situation in Rwanda is probably one of the, it is a world record, it's one of the worst. It is comparable to what happened in Europe, it's comparable to what happened in Cambodia, at different scales and different, and now, the impact of that devastated the country. You can't imagine. I don't know if any of you has ever was in Rwanda in 1994. I was there, and one day I asked a friend, I said, look at this. Almost everything you could look at was, even trees were broken down, cars were broken down. Whoever is addressing the issue of human rights in Rwanda has to have that background and put it in context, not to separate it from the situations, our recent history.
If you go to Uganda, you go to other countries, a lot of people will say that, you know, well, maybe we feel like we have more freedom of the press here. But in Rwanda, they have much better roads and they have much better services. Schools, universal education up to 9th grade. GYC, I believe GYC really did play a role in bringing Rwanda to the place in 2009 where the parliament actually retracted on a law that was going to criminalize homosexuality. It was not going to be as terrible as the law from Uganda, but it was still going to criminalize it. And I just want to preface this by saying that because we work with a local partner organization, we're not forcing anybody to talk about any particular issues. We wait for these things to come out. As I said before, we haven't really collaborated with an NGO or a group on LGBT rights before summer 2009. And it just so happened that in summer 2009, we met a group called HOKA, and they were interested in coming to our workshop and becoming a part of our workshop. Coincidentally, we also had an openly gay woman on the delegation, and she just obviously gave a great amount of attention to this process and had support from other delegates as well. And essentially what happened was the coalition strengthened. There was a coalition that was built, essentially, and John said, and you can read about it in our program report from summer 2009, that this really hit them a lot, that this dialogue that they had connected them with HOKA and connected them even with another young man here named Sebi, who has been working on a relatively secret project on men who have sex with men from the National Commission on HIV and AIDS. So you have this health program over here doing very progressive work, relatively secretly, and luckily enough, we had all these elements coming together. By August, the law was coming forward, and the coalition banded together and said, we're going to address this on issues of health, on issues of social rights, and essentially by December, the law was repealed. We create the environment within which these kinds of ideas can cross-pollinate and can build coalitions. And where it all comes together, why we can do this in 3 weeks, is that these organizations essentially give members to the workshop also. So about half the workshop will be from the organizations themselves, so that there's actually employees of the organization or volunteers in the discussion about human rights. That's a traditional Rwandan clap. It's a traditional Rwandan rhythm, and it's infectious.